Hello everyone, this is Brian and welcome back to Twilight Struggle Play the Experts, the game where I play the experts and you wonder how many versions of the Soviet national anthem I can find in the public domain. Now last time we started a game against a very highly rated opponent. We managed to get a good containment headline in for a lot of ops. We fought the Middle East to a scoring draw and sent Nasser off into space, so everything was looking pretty okay. We took over Europe, got a little behind in Asia, and then turn 2 came. Oh, turn 2. It started off on a nice note with European scoring going our way and moving it into our column, but then he hit us with the Red Scare, which not only made it possible for him to pretty much outmaneuver us brutally in Asia, but it also it sealed the fate of West Germany because we had no card we were ever going to be able to fill back in when the blockade came. So him having decolonized and just generally laid waste to Asia, we come to turn 3, the turn of the reshuffle. Now, at the beginning of this turn, we know that he has certain cards. We know that he's got Asian scoring, which kind of hangs over our head. We know that he has got de-Stalinization, another card we're not looking forward to. It's going to turn South America red is what we're expecting. And he's got the nuclear test ban, and he's got Cambridge 5, and then the rest of his cards are new things that he has come up with. So let's look at our hand as we contemplate the answers to your homework, which as always were to come up with the correct headline, or at least a strong headline, a good headline, and then think about what our plan should be this turn in light of what we have, in light of what we know he has, and of course what we know that he knows that we have, which is to say he knows we have Truman, De Gaulle, Suez, duck and cover, special relationship. He doesn't actually know we have 5-year plan, Comic-Con, and the mighty UN intervention card. So the real crux of the matter here is Asia scoring. And right now, he unfortunately dominates that. And we don't have anything in that. None of our headline cards are very likely to stop him from owning Asia with domination. They're very small asterisk on the 5-year plan. So we can't do a lot about that, but we don't have. Okay, well, let's eliminate some headlines. Truman Doctrine, obviously we're not going to headline that now just to wipe out one point in Yugoslavia or whatever. We're going to save it to hopefully protect West Germany from his influence, because if he tries to come in there, notice we stuck the 1 point in so he can't get all the way to control. So if he comes piling in, we could play Truman and Doctrine as the event. Now he knows we have Truman Doctrine, and so he's not likely to do that. So we're not going to headline it. We're going to save it and try to keep threatening him with it. Now there's Duck and Cover. Duck and Cover can be a strong U.S. headline. It would knock the DEFCON down to 2 and give us 3 victory points that we may badly need. It would also stop him from taking a coup against us, but keep in mind that as you look around the map, there aren't actually a lot of attractive places that he would legally be allowed to take a DEFCON 3 coup against us. Anyway, the only place he could take a coup there's 2 places he could take a coup. He could go to Israel, but more likely he would go to South Africa if he was going to take a headline coup. Jordan and Lebanon, he could coup there, but he wouldn't change the DEFCON because they're not battlegrounds. So that would mean we could coup him in one of his little tiny hairless African 1 stability countries, which he definitely doesn't want us to do. So the point of him taking a coup would mostly be to stop us from taking a coup, since we don't even have enough out there for him to really want to take a coup against us, which makes the whole duck and cover thing kind of, in a way, less attractive, right? I mean, the points are still attractive. 3 points is 3 points. But denying him a coup when he doesn't really want a coup anyway is kind of almost self-defeating. We almost, want to make him have to take a unattractive coup, or it's at least it's a feature. If he has to take a coup in a place he doesn't really want to take one, then that's nominally a plus in favor of doing something else instead of duck and cover. Special relationship, not very useful because NATO is not in effect. And that really only leaves us with one other interesting event, which is the 5-year plan. Now, 5-year plan is not a headline I usually reach for as the U.S. There's occasionally times when the Soviets are trapped with the CIA card or something like that, where it makes sense to attack their hand size and to do it early in the turn. But normally the 3 ops is better than taking a completely random shot at a discard out of his hand. However, I'm looking at the cards he's got. So Asian scoring and de-Stalinization especially. If we hit either of those cards, it would be devastating to him. It would be awesome for us. Now, that's only he's got 8 cards, so it's kind of a 1 in 4 chance, except he's going to headline 1 card, and we can't hit that card. So assuming he doesn't headline de-Stalinization or Asian scoring, then we've got a 2 in 7 shot, which is, something of doing something really devastating. And so you look at, how big is the win if you win? Well, the win is big. Like if we hit the Asian scoring card, that basically costs him 5 or 6 points this turn, and that would be just massive for us. De-Stalinization wouldn't be quite as massive, but still keeping him from getting into South America would be pretty important when it came down to it. So those would be awesome. That's the win case. Now then, the kind of almost not quite 3/4 of the time that we don't hit that, then it's a question, well, what else are we going to hit? Well, one of the things we could hit is nuclear test ban, which would at least trade 3 ops of ours for a 4 ops of his, so it'd still be net positive. Obviously, we wouldn't really want to hit Cambridge 5, and then there's just whatever else he has. Now we could, if he ends up holding one of our, maybe he has one of our remaining good events, like he could have redrawn Marshall Plan or NORAD or something, and then we would knock a good card out of his hand and get the event for ourselves. And those would be fine, but we can't. We have no idea what he redrew. And other than that, it's just kind of random pot shots at whatever cards that he does have. So the thing is, once that happened, once we take our shot, then it presents him with the dilemma of, does he want to take a coup at DEFCON 3? Because he'd basically end up taking it in South Africa, knowing it probably wasn't good. Now, he again, just like we knocked him out of Iraq, he might knock us out of South America, which, would be kind of bad, but it's lower odds, so it's less attractive for him to waste his tempo doing that, because while he's doing that, he's not scoring Asia. If he's sitting there holding Asian scoring, then that's kind of scary for him, because say he headlines whatever he headlines, and then we do 5-year plan and we don't hit one of the awesome cards, or at least we don't hit Asian scoring, well, then he has to decide to take the coup. If he takes the coup, then we could spend the rest of the turn. We got some decent-ish ops cards. They're not great, but we could use our ops card. And we'll see, we have UN intervention that could let us use one of those yucky De Gaulle or Suez crisis cards just for free ops. And we could sit there and, kind of take the battle to him in Asia, going for the total countries thing, because we're not far off right this second from getting to 8 countries. And so he would face the possibility of losing his chance to dominate. Or at the beginning of action round 1, he could just go ahead and dominate Asia, take his, at that point, 5 points, but then his choice, his unattractive choice in that case, is to let us have a coup. We get a big, nice coup in probably one of those African states, just because that's the best guarantee of getting in and having success. And, that kind of, that hurts him in the long run, but he takes the victory points now. But I do feel like presenting him with that, making him have to make that sort of decision is okay, because it's still, it puts some pressure on him to make the right choice. And hey, maybe he could make a mistake, right? I don't expect one, but he can't make one if I don't put any pressure on him, right? Or he could have some problem in his hand that we don't know about. Now, it's conceivable he could headline Asia, but unless he's holding a redrawn Indo-Pakistan war, I don't expect that. If he does headline Asia, then, no huge loss for us. We just move on to other goals. He could headline de-Stalinization. That would be a lot of excitement, but, he probably won't do that because most Soviet players don't. But basically, the trade-off is between headline the 5-year plan, take a small shot at getting a really big blow to him, and then present him with this kind of awkward dilemma between the coup and getting your Asian stuff done, or duck and cover, which it takes away his coup and gives us 3 points. But there's 3 different war cards he could have redrawn, so he's got a lot of chances to have gotten a war card that would give him the op, so that we wouldn't get so that he would get 2 of the points back, basically, because we wouldn't be getting any ops for sure. So we either get 3 points or 1 point, and there's a pretty reasonable chance we're only getting 1 point, and then he definitely, if we've knocked the DEFCON to 2 in headline phase, then he is absolutely playing Asian scoring on his first thing, or else he's pumping in some huge nuclear test ban card and ensuring himself a 6-point Asia instead of a 5-point Asia. But one way or the other, he's gonna have all the momentum and all the tempo, and he's gonna be able to score Asia. And so he's going to get 5 or 6 points, and we are at best only getting 3, and probably it seems likely we're only getting 1 net point. So, do I want to just lock in basically probably losing about 4 points, most likely 4 points? Or do I want to go for the 5-year plan, which could, for certain, end up worse? We could end up getting Asia scored against us, not having any ops, and not having duck and cover give us some points. So, it could be, we could end up with a net, -6-ish or -7 even, but the chances of ending up a lot better than that, like a lot better than -4, are also considerably higher. And so, having weighed those 2 alternatives, what I'm going to do is I am going to take a chance here, and I'm going to headline the 5-year plan. And let's see how good the 5-year plan is. And let's see what he has headlined. Oh, so he has redrawn the Europe card, which is a little bit too bad for us because it's like right when our guard is down. We just lost most of our West German influence last turn. So he has managed to dump European scoring. On the other hand, we have hit, okay, so we didn't get the big kahuna, but we did get a reasonable hit. We traded our 3-point card for his 4-op card. And I think that, let's see, so he doesn't absolutely necessarily have to play the China card, does he? But we've cut his hand size, so that's something, and we took our chance. So now it's up to him. Does he score Asia right now? We're just sitting out there helpless. We can't stop him from scoring 5 points if he wants to do it right now. Or does he take a coup, probably in South Africa? And it's a coup. It's a coup in South Africa. Oh, and he rolled a 6. And that is, well, that's unfortunate. Obviously, it's always sad when we get completely knocked out of Africa. And he even gets a point, and it's just, yeah, Southern Africa looking kind of bad. But I guess that sets our course. That means we don't have any further key decisions to make because we know that what we must do is crush him in Asia. Crush him in Asia. And I guess the right way to go about that is to go pile into Indonesia, pay the iron price with a 3-ops card. And now he's going to get a bunch of guys in Europe filling up. I don't think we're ever going to have much of an attack in East Germany or Poland from the way it's looking. And we are just trying to, once again, deny. Now we know he has the Asian card. We're once again trying to deny him enough total countries to dominate Asia. And for the moment, okay, we've got the China card. He's going, he reached for the biggest gun in a land war in Asia. The China card is big. Okay, wow, look at that. So he used a full China 5 influence play to put 2 in India, taking its battleground total up, and to pay the iron price in Laos, Cambodia. And that brings him to 8. So he has got a strong domination. All right, so yeah, this may be going, this turn may be going that way I told you where all the bad things happen. So I guess we just, so here's what we're going to do. We're just fighting him on ops. We're hoping his ops aren't as good. Ops aren't as good as our cards. Because we do have a lot of these. We have a number of 3s we can play. We have even another after this one that we can play safely without hemorrhaging a De Gaulle in Europe, which, Europe being scored until turn 7, we might even consider doing to stave off this domination. So we're back. And we're just hoping he doesn't have a giant 4-ops card. But he does. So there's the Marshall Plan. So he's willing to, this time, eat the consequences in Europe. But see, he has taken Laos, Cambodia to over-control. So a 3-ops card will not be enough. So we tried a land war in Asia. And now we're coming out a little wanting. Are all the bad things going to happen? So here are my choices. I could fill up Taiwan, which would save us a victory point because it currently counts as the Formosan Revolution makes it count as a battleground for us in scoring. But he would still have 8 and still have 4. So he'd have 4 battlegrounds to our 3. So he'd still score it for 5 at that point. So we would turn a 6-point scoring into a 5-point scoring, which would be a fairly sad ultimate result. Now, what I was hoping we might be able to do is break control of a battleground at the same time to take his country count down. Because remember, he needs a breathing space he needs to go into his turn with domination in order to have time to play that card. So the problem is that breaking control of one of South Korea or North Korea, somewhere like that, unfortunately, although it lowers his battleground count by 1, so it saves a point, but we don't have enough to take the country, because that would take him from 8 to 7, and we would still only have 6. Yeah, 6, because we don't control Taiwan. And we only have a 3-op card. If we had a 4-op card, we could break control of a Korea and control Taiwan, and that would break domination, and that would be good. And I would imagine kind of poking that in repeatedly until the end of the turn. And so... And he's got 3 more turns, so he's got plenty of time to get his stuff done. So I guess between filling up Taiwan and just surrendering and at least threatening one of his, since both of them save 1 point, I'm going to go ahead and break control in North Korea, pay the arm price. So there's at least kind of a threat that we could put some guys in there and in the long term end up to the good. It's a threat. It slightly makes his choice to just go ahead and score Asia just a little more irritating because it does cost him a point. And I'm going to go ahead and put the other point into Taiwan kind of as a Hail Mary because I think he's going to just score Asia now and claim his 5 because that's a pretty big win. But if he doesn't, for any reason, if he wants to really recontrol North Korea and get the 6, I want to have the option of using my 3 card to maybe grab Taiwan and break control of one of his countries. Because at that point, even breaking control of one of somewhere like Burma would be enough to, even if he over-controlled both Koreas, would still be enough. So there's, if he went that way, if he really wants to play for the full 6 points, there's still a little bit of chance there that we could deny him domination. So let's just bend over and see if he's going to score Asia. Oh, he's going to de-Stalinize. He wants to have it all. Okay, well, it's exciting. He's going to pull off his dudes from Europe and okay. Oh, so he's using a point. I see. He's using a point of de-Stalinization to fill North Korea back up. So, and then, he feels like, I guess, 3 points into various parts of South America is probably enough, and he's probably right about that. 4 points into South America is ideal, but 3 points is pretty good given that he's already got pretty firm grip on Africa, and it solidifies it up. However, we are moving along in the turn. We're definitely getting late in the turn here. And remember that thing where I put a point into Taiwan? It was sort of almost a Hail Mary, kind of just in case he really wants to rip the ripper off. And I think it's gonna let me do a thing. I think that we can go. We're gonna have to eat a de Gaulle. Who ever expected we'd be eating a de Gaulle? But remember, Europe has scored until at least turn 7, and we did, with help from his Marshall Plan, get France to 5. So it's not going to be super attractive for him over in France while he sits there. And again, if he gets frisky in Europe, we've got the Truman Doctrine coming. So I feel reasonably safe. And now I'm back in the feeling that I have a totally legitimate chance to stop his domination. And it's a big, hairy payday if we do that, because we're costing him 3 victory points that he would have gotten, and maybe even a 4th victory point. Yeah, and plus we're filling Taiwan, we're poking a hole in a Korea. Yeah, that's 2 points margin right there. I think if he scores it now, it's going to actually score for zip instead of, so that would be like a 5-point saving. So I'm willing to let him have the Gaulle for that. And so he gets one more shot. And he's over-controlled that, and he's given us this useless independent, but his only hope now is that we don't have a 2-ops card, but we do have a 2-ops card. This turn is turned around. This turn is turned around, and we can't break North Korea anymore, but we're going to break South Korea. We're going to pop it open, and he is in played. Zugzwang, however you say that. I don't even know how to say that. Somebody explain to me in comments how you pronounce that word. But he has to move. He has to make a move he doesn't want to make. And so... Wow. We got out alive from a land war in Asia. Some would say 2 land wars in Asia. Oh, does that feel good? I don't know that I really deserve that outcome based on my play, but I certainly was focused on Asia. So I couldn't bring myself to give him the 5 victory points, and I guess if this goes down as a kind of deciding point in the game later on, I don't know. I mean, honestly, I'm in the turn up, only 2 points or something on the scoreboard, but yeah, it was. I guess he wasn't ready to settle for a mere 5 when he was hoping to get that 6th squeeze, that 6th point. So both of us were kind of in a victory points greed thing, and this time our hand proved a little bit more capable. Everybody made sacrifices in Europe, as it turned out. He gave us a Marshall Plan, which will, pretty much close the door on any hope that he could ever possibly, conceivably dominate Europe. And we gave him a de Gaulle, which isn't likely to result in problems in France, but it could result in problems in Algeria coming up. But here we are in round 6, and we get a play. So what did I... Oh, that's right. I used UN intervention. So yeah, I'm playing all my cards this turn. So we have to part with Truman Doctrine. And if we part with it as just, I could just fill up France with it to lock it down, but we're not going to see Truman Doctrine again until at least turn 7. And at that point, it's just as likely to come up in his hand as in our hand. And so our chances of getting, of removing his access from something or winning some huge op war in Europe are now basically probably behind us. And so I think it actually profits me more to play Truman for the event and clean him out of France, because cleaning him out of France, he only loses 1 op, but he loses access to Algeria. And given that he has influence in every single other battleground in Africa, I think that popping him out of France and having him not touch Algeria, at least for the nonce, is a very important and valid use of that card. Better than anything else I can think of that I could do with 1 op. Turn's going to end. He's going to get his 2 points because we never got any military ops again. And we go to the first turn of the mid-war, turn 4. And let us look at what has come around to us in cards. All right, well, that is an interesting collection of cards. There's some good things, there's some good things, some bad things, but no ugly things. Let's put it that way. I'm kind of liking this hand. There's some decent ops, first of all. Cuban Missile Crisis for 3 ops, Alliance for Progress, which, it's sad that we control not a single battleground anywhere in the Americas, so it's not like we can play that for ops. And if I could get 2 or 3 points off of that, I would play it for points, but I think that's going to be 3 ops. We got the Pope, who is going to be utterly useless in this game in Europe. Europe already having scored, Poland being at 8. So that's probably going to be used for ops. Socialist governments, it's either null ops or it's space. Decolonization, definitely space. And if it goes, then we could space socialist governments just to get down space track and try to get some points. Panama is a really nice little card for us to get into both of those continents down there at the same time. However, and I should say that we have two colossally good cards in our hand. One of them is ABM Treaty, which is going to let us, assuming he doesn't headline Missile Envy this turn and steal it from us, it's going to let us lower the DEFCON and then take 4 ops, which means, in other words, we can take that. Once he puts the DEFCON at 2, we can take it back down to 3 and crush something with a coup and get into a continent of our choice. So we can at least get some more boots on the ground, as they say, in another awesome continent. So that's an awesome card. And then another colossal card that whose time has not come round yet, but is the card I most want to save for a later turn, is Ask Not What Your Country Can Do For You, the JFK card. Because what that card allows me to do is pick as many bad cards in my hand as I want and get rid of them, send them to the discard pile. And there are 2 main flavors of bad cards. There's exactly 2 kinds of bad cards that are bad enough that I would be willing to part with that card to get rid of them. And my favorite one to part with is a bad scoring card. So at this moment, it would be something like the Africa scoring card or the Central American scoring card. A minute ago, it would have been the Asian scoring card, but we won't see that again. But basically, anytime you can dump a card that would have given your opponent a bunch of points, that's a good card to dump. And since scoring cards, unlike, say, OPEC or some of these other cards that give him points, can't be sent to space, then Ask Not is a once-in-a-game opportunity to just floosh a swoosh on some horrible, horrible scoring card. And so that can be worth a lot of points. If you think about the point swing on, does Africa score for domination or, God help us, control? That could be a lot of points if we manage to make the card not score at all. So that is a precious, precious thing, and I'm willing to save that card for a very long time to find a bad scoring card to map him up with. The other card that I might have to use it to get rid of is Lone Gunman, because I'm likely to have no other way to get rid of Lone Gunman. And so if it gets up toward the late war and I've got Lone Gunman, because once in the late war, there's other ways he can attack my hand. He can't really attack my hand very well during mid-war. The Soviet player cannot attack the U.S. player's hand very well effectively during mid-war. So I could sit there and nurse Lone Gunman along in reasonable safety through the mid-war, but once it gets up to late war, it's time to ditch that baby, because there are some other DEFCON threats, and the terrorism card revs up, and all of the Aldrich Ames card. He starts to have a bunch of ways to attack my hand, and so it could get very awkward, and I don't want that. So those are the 2 ways, and meanwhile, when I do play it, I'll get rid of as many other bad cards as I manage to accumulate that turn, but it's not going to be this turn. That's the key thing. So the question is, what are we going to headline of this interesting set of things? And so while I'm talking, you can be thinking about, what's your choice? What would you headline out of this hand? And clearly we're not going to headline any of his events. Cuban Missile Crisis is sometimes a fun headline. It denies him a coup, and it makes it harder for him to do other coups. But we're completely out of position for that, because for one thing, now he's like really hard pressed to deny us. Like he has to coup Israel to drop DEFCON right now with a coup, because we've been so wiped out of everywhere. So that doesn't help. And then he does have points in Cuba, so he could cancel the crisis at any time. So it's not one of these situations. Sometimes it's really awesome when you can put the Cuban Missile Crisis in against a Soviet player that's not in Cuba, and then you can score a whole bunch of ops against him and get some points for that. Plus you can coup things everywhere, and he can't coup back. And it's an awesome card when the conditions are right, but the conditions are very, very, very much not right. It is also just precisely the exact wrong time to headline Panama Canal Returned, because that would poke us into Venezuela just in time for him to be able to have a good place to do a coup instead of not having a good place to do a coup on his first action round. So we don't want to do that. ABM Treaty is sometimes a good headline for the U.S. player for two reasons. One is it would allow us to, if we wanted to have a coup at DEFCON 4 in Asia, if it was really important to us to, say, take a giant coup in Pakistan or imagining a different world where we didn't control Thailand to do it there, then that would let us do it because it would immediately drop to 4. We know we would go first because it's an Ops 4 card and U.S. wins, headline precedence ties. And so we would be able to take a coup there. Doesn't stop him from getting a coup because then DEFCON goes back to 3 and he can take his normal coup. But if we wanted, if we, say if Asia had not scored yet and we maybe suspected he had it or just wanted to fix our situation in Asia, if Asia scoring was still sitting out there, then I would certainly be thinking real hard about a coup in Pakistan right now. Headline coup. The other kind of interesting thing one can do with it is headline it and use it for ops, which would mean that we would get to take ops before the Soviet player ever did this turn. And so imagining a turn, it's a really good headline for the U.S. if you have any reason to believe that the Soviets might headline a scoring card, and if you would be able to use this to screw his scoring card up. Stop his domination or even flip his domination using the ABM Treaty. So if you feel a scoring card headline coming on, then an ABM Treaty headline can be good. But normally, in normal conditions, the other time it would be a good headline is if I'm convinced he's probably going to do missile envy. And, being convinced of certain cards has more to do with, like, if we were in a later turn, and so we're getting down to a smaller subset of cards in the deck, and we're thinking, I haven't seen Missile Envy, and here we only have the 1/4 card, so that'd be the one we'd have to give to him, et cetera, et cetera. That's another time to headline it. But I don't think it's the best headline now. And that brings me to the card that I actually am thinking of headlining, which is CIA Created. Because CIA Created, first of all, it's only a 1-ops card, so, it kind of pokes a 1-ops, it saves us from having to play it later in the turn for only 1-ops. In fact, it even lets us take an op in headline phase, not, in this case, not ahead of the Soviet player, almost certainly, because he's probably headlined something more than 1-op. But it does give us a chance to steal the coup from him, so it gives us a chance to sneak our way into... Probably it's going to have to be Africa because a 1-point coup is probably not a sure enough thing to get into South America. Plus, we have a big ABM coup. So that would let us take one coup in Africa with CIA and then maybe take another coup later in the turn in South America. And that would give us a foothold in 2 important places, a presence, a battleground, all those good things all at the same time. And meanwhile, it would also give us a peek at his hand, which never hurts because we would suddenly know, maybe he's got some scoring cards. And if we can catch him with some scoring cards, then we can cause him not to be able to intimidate it as much. We'll know what's happening, what's not happening, where we need to go. And that's actually especially good when we have a big, gruesome, extra unexpected, semi-unexpected coup in ABM Treaty, because if we find out he's holding Africa scoring or he's holding South America scoring or whatever else, then we can, then we have that knowledge by the time we use ABM Treaty. Now, the trade-off is that there will no longer be the possibility that he draws CIA and has to deal with its terrible consequences for him if he plays a DEFCON 2 that would, starting a nuclear war and making him lose the game. But again, any card that goes to the discard pile now is not coming back until at least turn 7. And then there's the chance that we just draw it anyway. So, you can think of that as roughly a 50-50, right? That if it gets dealt, that it goes to him as opposed to me. So, because if we get it then, well, then maybe we'll like it, maybe we won't. Maybe it won't be a good time to have the CIA, so we may not even headline it, and then we're stuck with a 1-ups card. Maybe he gets it, But, does the late war even come? Do we even survive to the late war to get to even take advantage of that? So there's a whole lot of ifs. Whereas right now I'm looking at a thing where of all the cards I could headline, that gives me the clearest set of advantages of any of the cards. Because unlike ABM Treaty, it denies him a coup. And in conjunction with ABM Treaty, it even gives us 2 battleground coups. And we don't need to, none of our cards in this hand are bad enough to blow our ass not opportunity. And Panama Canal is actually down. It's going to be a great card later in the turn, but right now it's downright dangerous to play it below DEFCON 2. So we will either play it during the turn to kind of screw with him in South America, or maybe we'll try to play it at the end of the turn, and maybe we can break his control as kind of an action round 7 play to make the beginning of his next turn, have to choose between doing a coup and fixing save Venezuela. But what we need to do here is it needs to be the CIA. That's what I think. So argue with me in comments. And we have been quagmired. We have a long, hard slog through a quagmire. But let's first look at the little beauties he has in his hand. Okay, well, it is always good value for money when you can see 2 scoring cards. So he is going to be scoring Central America, and he's going to be scoring the Middle East. Now, we're going to be quagmired, and that means that every turn until we succeed, we have to discard a card and roll 1 through a 4. And on a 5 or a 6, we're stuck in the quagmire another turn. Now, fortunately, we have a couple of his bad cards that we can get rid of. So decolonization is going to be the first one up against the wall in Vietnam. and it's going off. And then next would be socialist governments, and whichever, if we, or we'll send it to space if not. So it certainly clears up we have a clear line of sending things to space and getting rid of bad cards. I'm extra glad we didn't headline a ask not, JFK headline is a really gruesome one to get caught by a quagmire with, because then what you want to do, of course, is throw away all the bad cards, but then you might just get good cards, and you have to throw away good cards, and then that's really sad. So that's okay. And I'm kind of thinking he's just going to get to score Central America in a domination, because, we just can't. Fortunately, I don't think it would take him too many moves to get over to Mexico. If he had some way to get into Mexico, we'd be facing a 10-point horrible Central American control situation. But it looks like he's probably going to be able to get domination. There's little we're going to be able to do about it. He's got Nasser to get into the Middle East at both ends. So he'll be able to go into Iran. So that's also looking kind of bad. We'll have to think about whether we're going to use ABM Treaty to kind of try to squelch that. But we don't even have that choice until we get out of the quagmire. And so we do have this little interlude in which we can first take a coup somewhere with CIA. And I think it's going to have to be in Africa, as much as I fear for the sanctity of South America, but especially knowing you didn't have either of those scoring cards this turn, I'm certainly not going to coup a 3-point Panama with a 1-point CIA. So I'm going to go ahead and coup, and we'll go somewhere. I guess the safest thing is Nigeria, because even if we get him in, when we get in by exactly 1, if we had gotten a 0, then at least he couldn't get back in easily. Whereas if we had done that in Zaire, for example, he'd be able to, and gotten a 0, he'd be able to come back in. Plus, with us only being at 1, he can't spend 3 points and pay the iron price and just take it back. Now, the other thing, that by denying him a coup, and you notice he didn't have any way to get ops, that takes the arms race card off the table for him as an event. He's not going to be able to exceed our ops. And so he's not going to be able to play that for the 3. If you can play that for 3 points, then it's a really good thing to do. And he's not going to be able to do that. I don't think he's going to have any way to get any military ops. And so that's good. And if we hadn't stolen the coup from him, then he probably well, he certainly would have had military option more than us, and he probably would. That would have been a bad scene. So we didn't know that, but it's another example of, when you can steal the coup, it is often a good thing to do. So he's going for a straight-up influence play. Fair enough. All right, and he is fixing South Korea. All right, so he has decided to go ahead and get his domination done in Central America while we're caught in a quagmire, and then he'll move on, presumably, to crushing us in the Middle East. So that's fine. That's a perfectly reasonable way to go about things. So we're going to toss decolonization of the jungle, and we're out of the quagmire. That's good. So that's the best possible result, is he does quagmire us. He gets his extra move, but we do get rid of a card we didn't want to have in our hand anyway, and the quagmire goes away. So that puts him on notice that we're back in the game here. Now he's saying, we can't we can't drop his domination in Central America. We could move into Mexico, and maybe he doesn't want, that would cost him 2 points. Okay, so yeah, he is, for that reason, scoring Central America, because he can grab 6 points instead of, I guess, 4. So that was a good scoring for him. But now the advantage of our hand peak is upon us, because we know that he has the obligation to score the Middle East before the end of the turn, and we have got good ops and good squishy card. We've got a lot of high ops cards that we can afford to pour into this. And so I think we need to contest this really firmly. Now, he's got Nasser, which means that he can have our influence and go to 2 in Egypt. But that means that if we put 2 in, that we would still have a presence in Egypt, and he wouldn't have control. So I want to play into Egypt now, because I want to put pressure. I want to be able to, if he plays Nasser, that's his whole turn. He gets a little thingy in Egypt, but then we could play the next turn into Libya, or next action round into Libya. And if I use, I think I'm going to use probably a 3-ops card here. Let's just use Cuba. Because if I also play into Iraq, that puts pressure on the Iran side. So he might not even feel like he has time to use Nasser. Okay, so that's kind of a multi-threat, because if he doesn't use Nasser, then we get into Libya anyway for free. So he could go into Iran, and then we take Libya, and maybe even if we used the China card, we could even take Iraq. And then he could use Nasser, but he wouldn't even control Egypt, and we could just take it back immediately with a 3-ops card, and he doesn't even touch Saudi Arabia at that point. And that looks kind of bad for him. Or he can use Nasser, and then we get a turn, and we can take Iraq and Libya once again. Now, at that point, he could take control of of Egypt, but then we can follow up in Iraq and start filling up Saudi Arabia. And again, I think we can actually now force a domination, a U.S. domination of the Middle East here. And it's great to be able to play in the Middle East, knowing the scoring card is coming and that he doesn't have something horrible like Muslim Revolution. It'll come later and maybe bite us, or maybe we'll get it and space it. But that'll be after the scoring card's gone. So I'm a lot more okay with that. This also eats into his future OPEC potential. So I really like this opportunity to play into the Middle East without, press our op. We probably have an op. We know his cards. We know we have an ops advantage here. His cards aren't as big as ours, and eventually we have some of these cards we want to play for the event. Okay, so there goes the arms race, and he is not Nassering. That's fine. He feels like he wants to lock down the Iran situation. So it is time for China, because China, so long Formosan Revolution, we hardly knew you, but it doesn't affect domination of Asia, even when it comes back around. It's going to be down to country count. So we're gonna take Libya and Iraq, and threaten, of course, to move into Saudi Arabia. And if he takes Nasser, then he doesn't even take Nasser. He doesn't even take Nasser. He senses a growing, crushing defeat and decides, because he realizes if he played Nasser, we could play, for example, he doesn't know what our cards are, but Alliance for Progress and just take it back, and then Nasser's gone. At least he still has a threat of Nasser. Maybe it comes, in some awkward relation to, or if he doesn't play Nasser, we can just move right into Saudi Arabia and get even more points. So he is cutting his losses. That is a big win for us, and it's all due to that CIA headline. So this is a good example of how good a CIA headline can be. And if you're don't be afraid to headline CIA during the mid-war. Now, I would still tend to, unless you have no other decent headline, I wouldn't headline CIA in the early war. In turns 1 or 2, like before the turn 3 reshuffle. If I'm the U.S., I'm really making I'll even take a bit of a sacrifice to shuffle that baby back in so he can, because it's really hard for him to deal with in the mid-war. It can be this huge, just unanswerable misery burden in his hand that he has to limp along, and it changes his ability to play the China card, and it sets a lot of traps for him. So I do try to shuffle it in the early war if I can avoid it. And I did, in fact, do that. Someone pointed out online to me that if I had been willing to headline CIA on turn 2, I could have definitely saved Thailand and even gotten an op by coupping Pakistan or something, or whatever, Africa, whatever. I can't remember exactly what was on the map in turn 2 at this point. And that's a very good suggestion, and it'd probably be a pretty strong play. I'm pretty conditioned against playing CIA voluntarily for the event in turns 1 and 2, so maybe I didn't give it enough consideration. But in any event, drew it again on turn 4, and I am not didn't hesitate to headline it, and it's turned out really well. Because, I don't really see anything he did this turn that was a mistake. Drawing a bad hand, I guess, is always kind of a mistake. It was kind of a icky hand, getting caught with 2 scoring cards, but it wasn't his fault. And then, so there's nothing he could have done about that. You could, maybe there's some scenario. We could, let's talk in comments about whether, seeing that headline, does it make more sense for him to get the Middle East done quicker? He doesn't know that I've got a crushing ops hand, but he could probably know I had a higher ops hand than him. Just statistically, it was likely. So the question is, would it have been better for him? We know it would have been better as it came out, but with the knowledge he had then, should he have cashed Middle East immediately, or played Nasser while we're in the thing, and then immediately play either one more round in the Middle East or something like that while we're in the thing, so that then we don't have a chance to take that stuff away from him? That might have actually been a lot better of a result for him, and then he can probably still dominate Central America anyway, although we would probably shave 2 points off of that. But 4 points scored for the Americans in the Middle East is pretty massive, and I think this is an awesome result. So, again, maybe there was something he could have done once he sees the CIA, but other than that, mostly this is due to our, getting good information at a time that it was bad for him for us to have good information. And of course, we had to get out of the Quagmire, which could have easily, this could have easily been a what's that word? Quagmire of a turn if things had gone a little differently on those dice rolls. But moving right along, we might as well, while we've got the momentum, deliver another hopefully crushing blow. I'd like to get into South America because a presence is worth 2 points, and we certainly don't want him to control it, which he would be rapidly able to do. And I'm going to pick Venezuela as my favorite spot. It's my favorite spot even when it isn't the easiest one to succeed in the coup in, which it actually is also. But the reason it's my favorite spot is because A, it's part of OPEC, so if I get in, it costs him a point. B, the non-battleground next to it is the little 1 point Colombia, so it's a little harder for him to, if he surrounds me to try to realign me, it's a little bit easier to guarantee coupping back out than if I'm in Brazil and he comes at me from both directions down from Uruguay. So, kaboom! Well, that was a decent roll. We played a big card. He had a little thing. We got a good roll, so we're in at 4. So he probably won't be getting us out there at least for a while, and so that saved us a lot of potential points later. All right. Oh, Korean War for the event. Right. He has realized that he doesn't have any military ops, and we've got 5, and he doesn't want to lose 2 points to us for military ops. So he's just playing it for the war. Well, it's good that we had Taiwan and Japan, because he almost would have gotten 2 victory points for winning the war. I mean, it doesn't matter if he suddenly went to 7 as opposed to 5. It wouldn't make much difference, although it would mean we couldn't ever break control there again. But anyway, he got his 2 ops, which is, good solid play. Let's space race socialist governments. Okay, good. We're in. That's nice. Gets rid of our last bad card. Oh, and he is playing kitchen debates for influence. We don't get the 2 points. Okay, so he is trying to stay in strike range on West Germany now that, and plus he's actually that play may be even more about getting into France and therefore Algeria. I think he has his eye on playing through to Algeria there. It does make me actually think, okay, this Pope, as I said, useless. Let's just go ahead and get Algeria. So that currently keeps Africa at even. He'll be able to dominate that with a little bit more effort, assuming we don't get some awesome Voice of America card and just rip him out of the bottom of Africa or something like that. Or steal a coup with grain sales, all those beautiful ways we could get in, but we can't count on it. But now we're at least fulfilling the Brian Reynolds primary objective for the Americans in Africa, which is not to get nothing. We're trying really hard not to get nothing. And so far, we're succeeding. All right, captured Nazi scientist for influence again. And he is... Okay, he's over-controlling South Korea. He's kind of playing to his deep future in Asia there, but it's a pretty deep future. Asia's not going to be back for a while. And he just turned down a victory point, and a box on a space race that he's not really even in yet, for playing that for the event. That's interesting. He's higher rated than me and usually beats me, but I would have played that for the event. In this situation, like I understood last time, going into Vietnam because I might have had the Asian card and this and that and keeping his country count up so he can get domination. That seemed like an urgency sufficient to the task of playing that for ops. But I don't know. I really like to play that card for ops, and I recommend trying really hard to play that card for ops. For the event. I really recommend playing that card for the event. Capture Nazi Scientist. I recommend playing for the event if you possibly can. So that's interesting. We'll see how it goes. Over control in South Korea is certainly going to be a thing for him when Asia rolls around again in the future. But a victory point is a victory point. All right, and we unfortunately, I'm turning down a victory point too, but I'm getting 3 ops for it. If I had even one more country in the Americas, I would probably take the victory points for the 3 ops. But I'm going to take the 3 ops. And we are going to go ahead and fix Europe back up. I'm still a little traumatized over what happened to Europe. And then his little icky point he stuck in there makes me feel icky. It makes me feel icky. And I don't like feeling icky that's supposed to be my good continent. Get out of my Europe. Get out of my West Germany. And we're just going to do that. So we're doing a little homework, as it were, for the future. And speaking of homework, however, that brings us to the end of turn 4. Wah, wah, wah. DEFCON goes to 3. There's no ops changing points because we got some ops this time. And let's look at our turn 5 hand. It is time for a little bit of homework. So take a look at our turn 5 hand here, and your homework is to evaluate this situation. Find us a headline card. There are definitely some candidates out there, and I would like to hear from you what you think, which one we should do. And then there's the issue of strategy through the turn. There are some scoring cards that we have seen, and there's some scoring cards we haven't seen, and there's some scoring cards we hold in our hand. And all of those may affect what our strategy is through the turn. So tell me about this hand. Let's talk about it in comments. Talk about how the way the last 2 turns went. And I will see you next time on Twilight Struggle, Play the Experts.